Primal Chaos.
Hey guys, Primal Chaos here. Welcome to the channel. As you guys know, I've done a fair amount of a cappella stuff in the past. I've done a little bit of home free, but quite a bit of pentatonics. But you know, like everything I hear of theirs just absolutely blows my mind. And not a single a cappella video goes by without there being at least 50 recommendations to do voice play. And for some reason, I've never got around to it. And so I'm going to correct that mistake today. Oh man, I don't know if I'm ready for another a cappella act. Everything they do just melts my brain. And if these guys are even half as good as you guys say they are, I'm in for a real treat. Voice play featuring J Nun. I don't know any of these people. I don't know. I haven't followed any voice play. I've never heard voice play sing, and I don't know who J Nun is. So fill me in the comments. I'd love to know. You guys are always the best at, you know, supporting me in my journey of discovery and letting me know, you know, what's happening, you know, with all these artists and where they're from and their history and things like that. So feel free to go ham in the comments. So I literally just clicked on the first one at the top of the list, and it's Nothing Else Matters by Metallica. I don't know if this is their most famous video or, you know, what broke them or anything like that. But let me know some recommendations of where I should take this next. Now, just before I jump in, I just wanted to say this video today is brought to you in part by Enchroma Glasses. I wear Enchroma Glasses every day. They definitely altered my experience as far as my relationship with color in the world. They're for people with color blindness. I'm a strong pro-tan, and that means I don't see red particularly well. And these glasses actually have helped me sort of discover what I didn't know about color in a big way, and that's helped me greatly as an artist and stuff like that as well. If you are colorblind, if you know anyone who is, definitely point them in the direction. The link's in the description. They'll take you there. Also, don't forget to check out my website, primalchaos.com, P-R-Y-M-A-L. I've got everything there, t-shirts, hoodies, shoes, everything. There's a bunch of stuff, and I'll always be constantly adding more of my personal artwork there in the form of merch. So appreciate the support there. Let's jump straight in. I've talked long enough. Let's let voice play do the talking. Here we go. Cool. Oh! Now they're just showing off. Oh! Oh, the arrangement. Come on! Hang on. Is that like an E1? What is that? How has he got an extra octave below bass? Again, don't take my word for it. Again, it's difficult because I don't have a full range keyboard. So sometimes C4 and C3 are, you know, whatever it may be. To my ears, he just seems to be able to drop down an even lower octave than seems possible. I'm going to jump back a little bit. Oh, yeah. Boo. Maybe it's there, but he's resonating it so deeply and richly it sounds lower. I don't know. In fact, you can almost see. I'm sorry to just keep going over the same bit, but I mean, you guys understand, right? You get it. It's just so unusual to hear. You can see him almost like pull his chin back and elongate his neck to resonate. Boo. I don't know. But I mean, it's not that he's hitting the note. It's that he's hitting the note with such richness and acuity and just great tone color. Like, it's not just him just blasting out just random noise. It's a great note.
couldn't be much more from the heart. Forever trusting who we are, and nothing else matters.
Oh, man.
Never opened myself this way. Life is ours, we live it our way. All these words I don't just say, ooh, and nothing else matters. Trust I seek and I find.
I just can't get over that bass. I just can't. I swear on most sound systems, you won't even hear something that's sub-harmonic. Like, I mean, these are great headphones, right? They have a great frequency response, I'm questioning whether or not I'd even be able to hear that bass note coming in, because it's so subtle. If I was listening in my car, which again has an okay sound system, I don't know if I'd hear it, right?
Finding you every day for us something new. Open mind for a different view. Oh, and nothing else matters. Oh, never cared for what they do. Never cared for what they know. But I know.
I'm going to go back and start that solo again because I want to hear it. But this brings up an interesting point. The timbre of their voices are all spectacular, but the one thing that's really standing out to me is the tuning, right? So you can tell that they're very experienced choral singers because there's very little vibrato unnecessarily, right? If they're doing a solo part, then they'll embellish it a little bit. Even the first solo is actually really straight, and it almost gives the illusion that, and again, I'm not making any accusations because I don't believe this for a second, but it almost sounds like what auto-tuned vocals sound like because they're so perfectly in key and they maintain that note so cleanly, which is obviously pivotal for artists like this, right? Because everybody's relying on everyone else hitting the note perfectly and keeping it maintained, because as soon as anyone starts to waver away from the pitch, everything starts to chorus. And sometimes that can sound nice and organic and real, and sometimes it can make it sound bigger than it is. But if you're going for really locked in tight harmonies that are so tight they sound programmed, you need to have everybody singing consistent notes. And it brings me back to one day I was in the studio when I was a lot younger. I used to manage a studio with another guy who was an amazing guitar player. And there was actually a third guy as well, George, if you're watching. And, one day we both sat down with Marshall, who's my friend, and said, can you teach us guitar? If you give us lessons and stuff like that, an hour a week or something like that, just to get us up to speed. And the first thing he said to us was, can you play a single note? And we both looked at him and said, dude, we're both intermediate guitar players. We don't need to start from scratch, right? But hang on. Right, so like the lesson was this, and I don't know where he pulled this from, if he just made it up on the spot or whatever. We were both so eager to play fast and drop my pick. Like we were looking for the secrets to, but what we should have been paying attention to is or because fundamentally you can hide a lot of bad technique by shredding, playing fast and going over the notes. But what's fundamentally important is your attack on the string, your positioning of your fingertip, not pressing too hard. Because like if you listen, you can bend a note sharp by pressing it into the fret too hard. Attacking the string in a certain way, and I mean, I know I'm going way off topic here with guitar, but it's still makes sense in context, right? So if you can't play a note with the impetus and the intention that is required to play that note, or with a clean vibrato or something like that, then all of this ephemeral shredding stuff, it's just that. It's ephemeral shredding. You got to worry about tone quality over all other things. And if you can sing a note perfectly, then you can start learning scales and licks, because you've already mastered breath control. You've mastered, you know, your facial positions and the way that your face interacts with your tone, your posture, your fitness, everything. It all comes into play, and being able to produce a good, solid single note tone in key, perfectly in key, because that's what's required here. Rock music doesn't care if you're flat or sharp, but this sort of thing, it's imperative that everybody in this group is so dialed in on their tuning that it sounds to modern music listening ears to be fake. And, you know, most people aren't aware of how rarely, particularly pop and rock singers, are actually singing perfectly in tune. I mean, everything's tuned now, so it's a lot easier to sort of find things that are, you know, perfectly in tune with the music. But if you go back to 60s and 70s stuff, there's flat and sharp all over the place. And it doesn't sound wrong because it's not that far out. But until you layer it with nothing to hide behind, and you put 5 voices together, all trying to play the same chord, if someone's a little sharp or flat, then you don't get that absolute crisp richness. You get chorusing, and, you know, I know chorusing isn't exactly the right terminology, because it's not about timing, it's more about frequency. But I guess it's in a way, it's got to do with modulation of frequencies and things. Long story short, these guys' tuning is some of the best I've ever heard. It's a whole other level.
So close, no matter how far. Couldn't be much more from the heart. Forever trusting who we are. And nothing else matters.
He loves playing with that low octave, man. And who wouldn't?
Never care for what they do. Never care for what they know. But I know.
Oh, great little lick there.
Never open myself this way.
Oh, the breath.
Life is ours, we live it our way.
All these words I don't just say. And nothing else matters. And nothing else. Trust I see, and I find in you. Every day for us something new. Open mind for a different view. And nothing else matters. And nothing else matters. Never care for what they say. They never care for what they say. Never care for games they play. Never care for what they do.
It literally just occurred to me that there's beatboxing. I'm so busy listening to the chords and how the chords are moving and the unusual sort of, you know, choices they're making as far as harmony goes, like the odd sort of unusual bass note or whatever. And it just occurred to me that the guy on the far right has been beatboxing this whole time, because it sounds so good that I didn't hear it. It was just part of the background noise. And there was nothing that stood out about it enough for me to latch onto it, because it just works. It just fits so perfectly. Now I'm going to have to go back a bit.
Open mind for a different view. And nothing else matters.
It just makes you want to sing along. God.
Never care for what they say. They never care for what they say. Never care for games they play. Never care for what they do.
I wonder, because I just heard him do a little bit of what sounded like a tom, do, and it sounded like it had reverb on it, like 80s toms do, right? And I'm wondering if you're mixing an a cappella group, right? Do you mix the beatbox the same way you would mix drums? You know, where you focus on like shaping the frequencies of the kick and the snare because you want them to be punchy and have a lot of drive and crack. And then throw a little bit of grease on the toms to make it sound like doo, doo, doo. Or, I mean, because obviously, you know, when you record into microphones, which they did, there's an element of mixing. You've got to balance all the vocals. Some people are going to be quieter. Some people are going to be louder. There might be an abundance of high frequency, an abundance of low frequency in the bass guy, purely just because of a thing called the proximity effect, right? Because in order for him to sing those low notes, there's not a lot of projection there, right? So you got to be right up on the mic. And you can every time you get an inch closer to the microphone, you add more bass response to the microphone. And so a bass singer, you'll usually find they're not singing out here like a tenor would be. Like out here, like a tenor would be. They're right up on the mic. So you can leverage that proximity effect and make it sound rich and deep. You know, and so there might be a point where there's too much bass response there and the bass no longer sounds tight. So, you know, you've got to EQ some of that out. You know, you do whatever you do in the studio. But it just occurred to me, if you're an engineer and they come in with a track and if the drums aren't cutting through the mix punchy enough, you got to sort of augment the frequency a little bit to make it work, right? Like you would with any drum kit or any, you know, the greatest drummer in the world comes in, you're still going to mix their drums, right? But there was something back there where there was like a little bit of a tom thing that sounded like they'd put some reverb on there to make it sound more 80s.
Matter and nothing else. Trust I see and I find in you. Every day for us something new. Open mind for a different view. And nothing else matters.
Yeah, I swear there was like a floor tom boom sort of sound. It was really cool. I mean, look, there may not be anything. That could just all be voice, right? And I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it is. Nothing would surprise me, but it just, there's like that little...
Nothing else matters.
You know?
Never cared for what they say. They never cared for what they say. Never cared for games they play.
The arrangements are really nice.
And nothing else matters. Never cared for what they know. But I know.
No.
Nothing else.
I was like, how are they going to do the solo? Wait on. I can't make this crazy shit going on.
Nothing else. So close, no matter how far. Couldn't be much more from the heart. Forever trusting who we are. And nothing else matters. Ooh.
Oh. Can I just be the first to say thank you so much for introducing me to this. This was absolutely nuts. Yeah, look, there's been a lot of, at the time I was all about pentatonics, everything pentatonics. And again, they're absolutely like mind-bogglingly good. But I was like, anyone else I find is just going to be some sort of like a knockoff of that or whatever, someone I've never heard of can't be that good. Here I am, Primal Chaos, and I was incorrect. These guys are absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. I wonder if anyone knows in the comments. I noticed obviously the guy doing beatboxing. I wish I knew their names, but again, it's tough for me to learn everybody's names, and it's not about disrespect. It's about just ignorance, right? I got to get around to it. But I noticed he plays violin. I wonder if any of the others play instruments, particularly string instruments like violin, cello, things like that, because nobody has to have better pitch acuity and like, like understanding of accurate pitch than people with unfretted stringed instruments. The guitar players, we can get away with it because we have frets, right? So each gap between these silver lines, these are called frets, is a note. So it doesn't matter whether or not, to a degree, it doesn't matter if I'm holding the string here or here, it's still the same note. Whereas on a violin, if you're not fretting the note right where that line would be, if it was there, they don't have these sort of guidelines, right? Unless you're right there, you're playing like, let me see, how would I just demonstrate it? I guess I would be like up here. You'd be sort of like, see how that's high? You could sort of emulate that by going down like that. There's no sort of, it'll be wee, like, because there's no definitive line. So the first thing you have to learn when you play an instrument like violin or cello is exactly where the notes are. And you do that by listening. You have to have great pitch ears. Guitarists just have to know mathematically where the notes are. And it's a little bit like cheating. But, we got enough to worry about. None of us are all that good at anything. So whereas that's something that makes classical performers obviously a little bit better as far as the ear training and stuff goes, because if they're not playing exactly where the note is, then they're out of key. And that's what these guys are doing with their voices. They're so perfectly attuned to one another that there's no wavering in pitch in their notes. And it can sometimes sound a little bit robotic through the solos, but then I noticed towards like later in the piece, they sort of loosen up and you hear a lot more licks and things like that, vibrato in places where they're doing a feature. But man, what should I do next? Because you've sold me. I want the whole package. I want the extended warranty. I want all the accessories. I want an extra controller, all the games. Just give me the whole thing. I'll buy it all now, right? Yeah, fantastic work. That's so good. I'm trying to think if I had anything else to talk about, but I think I've said everything I need to say. Thanks again for the recommendations. If you want to recommend more stuff, an easy way to do it is jump on my Discord as well. There's a link in the description. Also, if you want to support the channel, if you like what I do here, if I've brightened your day at all, feel free to buy me a coffee or just use super thanks under the video. Link in the description for that as well. And like, share, follow, subscribe. If you know anyone else who might appreciate this, or feel free to post it on any acapella or Voiceplay forums or Discords or whatever. I would 100% appreciate that as well. Thanks again, guys. I appreciate you sticking around. Stay primal. I'll catch you on the next one.